From the earliest beginnings of recorded history, inexplicable bits and pieces of evidence have surfaced that indicate our traditional timeline for the development of civilization is inaccurate. Objects, anomalies, and artifacts exist in museums all over the world that should not exist if our traditional concept of history is correct. How did our ancestors in Sumer electroplate jewelry before electricity was supposed to have been discovered? How did metallic alloys exist in ancient Persia long before our so-called modern science learned to manufacture alloys? Let's now look at some fascinating examples of knowledge that seem to have come before its time. It is reported that the Rama Empire of ancient India and Pakistan was developed some 15,000 years ago. That was long before any of the officially acknowledged civilizations blossomed in the West. The 7 greatest cities of Rama are known in Hindu texts as the 7 Rishi cities. Remains of some of these cities can still be seen in India and Pakistan. Epic poems from those times have come down to us through the generations. 2 of the most well-known are the Mahabharata and the Ramayana, and these massive works are littered with references to flying machines called vimanas. You see on the screen 2 quotations selected from literally thousands of references regarding vimanas. Vimanas in peace, vimanas in what seems like an atomic war, vimanas everywhere. There is even a passage describing vimana battles on the moon. Other ancient texts cover hundreds of pages with directions concerning how to build vimana-type craft. Here you see just a few lines from one of the texts translated by the International Academy of Sanskrit Research in Mysore, India. In 1923, T.K. Elappa produced these drawings of vimana craft using similar translations in early Sanskrit texts. Clearly, the people of ancient India had a superior but now forgotten civilization. And in light of this, perhaps a thorough search of Hindu texts could reveal long-forgotten knowledge and the fingerprints of the gods of creation. The Sumerians are one of the earliest known civilizations. Yet, until about 200 years ago, they knew more about the planets of our solar system than we did. 5,000 years before Christ, the Sumerians had named and described not just 9, but 10 planets and the asteroid belt. Zechariah Sitchin has spent his entire career translating ancient texts. He is one of a very few individuals who can decipher ancient Sumerian writings. Using these translations, he has plotted the elliptical orbit of the fabled 10th planet, which we have recreated here. The Sumerian gods were called the Anunnaki, or those who came down from above. Sumerian writings, pictographs, and cylinder seals tell how those who came from above had great knowledge and flew in the sky. The Sumerians had a highly developed story of creation called the Enuma Elish, many parts of which later became the basis for the book of Genesis in the Old Testament. According to Zechariah Sitchin's translation of Sumerian texts, the story of our Earth goes like this. The planet Nibiru entered the solar system. Nibiru's moon smashed into the planet Tiamat. Half the planet was spun into a new orbit and became the Earth, while the other half became the hammered bracelet, or the asteroid belt. Meanwhile, the planet Nibiru continues its highly elliptical orbit, returning every 3,600 years. How did the Sumerians know about the asteroid belt, and Uranus, and Neptune, and Pluto? Did you know that modern-day astronomers have been searching for a 10th planet in our solar system for many years? The still unobserved planet is the most likely explanation for small deviations in the predicted orbits of the known outer planets. Apparently, the Sumerians knew more than we do, even now. Sirius the Dog Star, one of the components of the constellation Orion, was a prominent symbol to many early cultures: the Mayans, the Egyptians, the Sumerians. The Dogon tribe in Mali, Africa, apparently knew more about Sirius than anyone in the scientific community did until about 1862. The Dogon tribe had a rich mythological heritage based upon the Sirius system. Their legends taught that the origins of life were based on a small star that revolved around the star Sirius once every 50 years. In 1862, scientists confirmed Sirius to be a binary system, and a small white dwarf star called Sirius B orbits Sirius A once every 50 years. Now, Sirius B is invisible to the naked eye. How could a primitive tribe in Africa have obtained such information? Author Robert Temple wrote an interesting book entitled The Sirius Mystery. Here is his answer to that question. On the ancient American continents, legends of miracle workers, teachers, gods from the skies stretch back across all of the early civilizations. The tall, light-skinned, bearded man-god Viracocha and his two assistants roamed South America performing wondrous feats and teaching about medicine, writing, metallurgy, construction, farming, and animal husbandry. Tiahuanaco, Bolivia, contains the ruins of a great port city on Lake Titicaca, a city built to honor Viracocha. The Mayan god Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, the god of light and knowledge, was a tall, fair, light-skinned, bearded individual who could fly through the air. Both Viracocha and Quetzalcoatl left, saying that they would return someday. The Mayans apparently knew about the planets of our solar system long before Western civilizations even existed. Teotihuacan, the city of the gods in Mexico, is laid out according to a celestial plan. There is a building, a marker, or unexcavated mounds here for each one of the planets in our solar system. The Mayans' knowledge of mathematics allowed them to calculate huge numbers that in turn led them to the creation of their magnificent calendar and construction of temples, all in keeping with recently discovered celestial cycles. Who were these light-skinned man-gods who taught such things? Sadly, we'll probably never know. When the Spanish began to explore Mexico, Moctezuma, king of the Aztecs, thought that Quetzalcoatl had returned, and a civilization with over 300,000 warriors was completely conquered by a small band of soldiers. Instead of bringing knowledge and power, the Spanish conquerors, in their lust for gold, destroyed most of the artifacts and records of earlier times. And what the soldiers missed, early missionaries destroyed later. This map was one of the many maps found in the famous Topkapi Palace in Istanbul in 1929. This map is called the Piri Reis map because it was drawn by a Turkish admiral named Piri Reis in 1513. The map was based on 20 or more earlier charts going back to the time of Alexander the Great. The map depicts the coastlines of the Americas, Africa, and Antarctica. According to widely accepted belief, Antarctica was not discovered until Captain Cook sailed there in 1773. Large portions of Antarctica are perpetually covered in ice. Yet the Piri Reis map shows landforms and coastline features that were not evident to modern man until echo soundings were performed in 1952. A study done by cartographer Arlington H. Mallory in collaboration with the United States Navy produced this projection. The Navy map approximates the confusing placement of land masses on the Piri Reis map. The study concluded that the Piri Reis map was based on a view of the Earth from high above Cairo, Egypt. Other maps of an ice-free Antarctica exist as well. The Orontius Phineas map, the Mercator map, the Bauch map, all existed before the official discovery of Antarctica, and all were drawn from still earlier charts, which in turn were based on charts with their roots extending back thousands of years. Modern science suggests that the last time Antarctica was free of ice was perhaps 6,000 years ago. Modern archaeology states that no true human civilization existed prior to 4,000 years ago. Once again, the open mind finds the imprint of a long-vanished civilization. with the technology and the capability and the desire to map distant points of our Earth. Now these two little fellows were excavated by an archaeological team that was digging along the border between Ecuador and Bolivia in the 1970s. They are fired ceramic, and they are artfully and very carefully made. Clearly the artist was molding his work in the shape of something that he had seen. The unusual similarities with early Soviet spacesuits is literally astounding. If you look closely, you can see the visor, the boots, the gloves, the flexible legs, and apparently control knobs on the chest piece. Now these objects were dated roughly at 1,000 years ago. How can we explain artifacts of this kind? Ooparts, as Ian Sanderson used to say. These objects are well before our time. What could that Indian who manufactured these beautiful pieces of art have tried to express? Now this ceramic masterpiece exists in the Archaeological Museum in Mexico City. It also dates far into the distant past, and well may be an image from the days of Viracocha and Quetzalcoatl. It depicts a god. Or does it? The similarity between this headpiece and modern spacesuits is astonishing. Here again we are faced with an object from the past that cannot be explained in modern understanding of ancient archaeology. In Mexico, the Mayan ruins at Palenque have yielded this design on the lid of a sarcophagus from the 9th century. It depicts a Mayan king by the name of Lord Shield Pakal. Eric von Daniken says that this stone relief shows a man controlling some equipment that resembles a rocket ship. His feet and hands seem to be manipulating controls. Flames seem to be coming from the rocket's base. A NASA scientist by the name of Blumerick has stated that the Palenque pattern is a classic representation of a ramjet, complete with air intakes, electrical control devices, an eyepiece, tubing, and fiery exhaust. However, archaeological experts have suggested otherwise. Ian Graham says that the design shows nothing more than a stylized representation of a Mayan wearing a nose plug with two serpents spitting fire. Other Mayan experts contend that the design depicts the standard Mayan symbol for corn. I suppose we'll never really know, but what do you think? Nose plugs, corn, or a man in control of some advanced flying machine? Now this is a sketch of an unusual ceramic in an archive area of Istanbul's Archaeological Museum. The actual object has been dated somewhere around 4000 BC. The shapes at the back of the object bear a striking resemblance to rocket thrusters found on our recent space shuttles. The humanoid figure sitting inside the object seems to be wearing a flexible suit of some kind. This out-of-place artifact was discovered by Zechariah Sitchin and his associates in 1993. At last word, the museum refuses to put the piece on display because they don't know how to label it. These solid gold figures are pre-Columbian artifacts found in several different archaeological digs in central and northern areas of South America. Archaeologists say that these figures are stylized bumblebees. They refuse to accept the idea that they could be exactly what they look like, representations of aircraft. The Smithsonian Museum in Washington had one of these objects on display until about 1985. When the similarity to modern jet fighters was pointed out, they removed the object from display. The worldwide organization called the Ancient Astronaut Society has adopted the image of the Smithsonian's object as part of their logo. This strange plate resides in the Berlin Museum of Anthropology. It was discovered in Nepal, Tibet in 1910 by a Russian archaeologist by the name of Lolodov. The museum will not allow the piece to be cut or drilled, so no one really knows what it's made of. Carol Robin Evans reports in her book, Sun Gods in Exile, Secrets of the Zopa Tribe in Tibet, that the plate is extremely heavy. It originally weighed in at 31 pounds. Later it was found to weigh 27 pounds. A third weighing produced a weight of 30 pounds, and when tapped, the plate rang like a bell. Here we have just another example of something that should not be, something that is totally out of place. The inscribed figures on the plate are tantalizing, to say the least. And one of the symbols on the plate resembles symbols reported on artifacts seen on the Ray Santilli video showing bits and pieces of a crashed UFO stored in a hangar at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Here you see an out-of-place artifact that's about as far out of place as you can get. These manufactured metal pieces were excavated during a deep drilling project in Hungary in 1980. They were found at a depth of 10,000 feet in a layer of metamorphic rock that dates to the Triassic Age, the age that contains the earliest known fossil records of mammals. These fragments were not part of the drilling rig, and everyone is completely perplexed about the origins of this object. I think these pieces are another indicator that our traditionally accepted concepts of earthly history don't account for all of the evidence from the past, and that the roots of mankind may have been planted and nurtured long, long, long ago.